The universe was old, much older than humanity could ever imagine. Countless stars had burned bright and faded. Countless worlds had risen with life and then fallen into silence. Civilizations had been born, expanded, and collapsed into dust long before Earth even had fire. Yet the universe was not empty. Somewhere far away from human eyes, in a sector of space filled with broken planets and abandoned ruins, a weak signal drifted across the void. It was not a war cry. It was not a declaration of power. It was a plea. The Veyari, once a proud people with shining cities and fleets that touched the edges of their galaxy, had been broken. Their enemy was not flesh and blood but metal and machine. The Kroth were relentless harvesters. They were not alive in the way most life understood, but they consumed worlds, stripped stars of resources, and left behind only cold shells. Against them, the Veyari had fought for centuries, and against them they had lost everything. Their homeworld was gone. Their colonies had been shattered. Only small groups of survivors drifted in ruined stations waiting for the machines to return. The message was their last desperate act. They had sent it not to one world, but in every direction, using broken transmitters, damaged satellites, and anything that still carried power. The words were simple: we beg for help. We are dying. Anyone who hears us, save us. They had little hope. The great empires of the galaxy had already turned away. The ancient races, the ones with fleets strong enough to challenge the Kroth, had decided that the Veyari were a lost cause. Why waste resources to save the dying? Why risk their own survival for strangers? The Veyari expected silence, but silence was not what they received. On Earth, in a quiet laboratory hidden deep under mountains, a team of young scientists worked through endless streams of cosmic noise. They were part of a research group searching for proof of alien life. Most of what they found was nothing more than background radiation, star signals, and static. But one evening, the computers detected something strange. It was not random. It was not natural. It was a structured pattern, weak, broken, but repeating. Dr. Elena Marquez, the lead linguist, leaned forward when the first clear pieces appeared on her screen. This isn't just noise," she whispered. Her voice carried excitement and disbelief. "This is language," her team gathered around. At first, the signal was nearly impossible to decode. It was fragmented, scattered as if it had traveled for centuries. But little by little, the structure revealed itself. Shapes turned into words. Words turned into desperate cries. By the time the translation was complete, the room was silent. On the screens glowed the message, "Help us. We are the Veyari. Our worlds are gone. The Kroth will destroy us all. We beg any who hear this. Save us." Elena's heart pounded. For years she had dreamed of first contact. She had imagined greetings, exchanges of knowledge, shared discoveries. But this was not what she expected. It was not curiosity. It was not peace. It was desperation. "We have to send this to the government," one of the technicians said. This is history." Within hours, the message was on the desks of Earth's leaders. The reaction was mixed. Some politicians argued it was a trick, or an old recording from a long-dead people. Others argued that humanity had enough problems of its own: climate change, poverty, resource shortages. Why should they risk themselves for strangers? But there were also those who saw something different. They saw an opportunity, a chance for humanity to step into the galaxy not as children but as protectors. The debate raged for weeks. Some wanted silence, some wanted preparation for defense. But in the end, humanity's decision was not made by fear. It was made by determination. For the first time in history, Earth's nations agreed on something that was not war, not trade, not politics. They agreed to answer. The fleet that left Earth was small compared to the mighty armadas described in science fiction. It was made of exploration vessels, repurposed cargo ships, and a few experimental warships. Humanity was still young, still learning how to cross the stars, but what they lacked in numbers they made up in resolve. Captain Aaron Blake stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, the flagship of the mission. He was not a legend, not yet. He was simply a soldier who believed that humanity could be more than survivors. His crew shared that belief. Engineers, scientists, medics, and soldiers. Ordinary people united by a single decision. They would not ignore a cry for help. "Course locked," his navigator reported. "If the data is correct, the Veyari colonies are 3 jumps away." Aaron nodded, his jaw set. Then let's show the galaxy who we are. The fleet jumped. The Vayari survivors huddled in their broken stations. They had given up hope long ago. The message had been more of a prayer than a plan. When the first human ship appeared out of the void, they thought it was the Croth. Panic filled the station. Families gathered expecting death, but the ship did not fire. Instead, it broadcasted a message in broken Vayari tongue. We heard you. We are human. We came to help. On the viewing screens, the survivors saw human faces for the first time. Strange, different, but alive, so alive. The humans smiled, waved, and reached out with hands instead of weapons. The Vayari could not understand. Why would anyone come? Why would strangers risk themselves? But when the first human engineers arrived carrying food, medicine, and repair tools, the survivors wept. For the first time in years, they felt hope. The days that followed were filled with hard work. Humans repaired life support systems, patched hulls, and shared water and food. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand tribute. They only asked questions about the Croth, wanting to know their enemy. The Vayari elders warned them. You do not understand what you face. The Croth are endless. They will come for you as they came for us. But Aaron Blake only answered with calm determination. Then let them come. We are not afraid. The Vayari thought it was foolishness. Yet when they looked into the eyes of the humans, they saw something strange. Something even their proudest warriors had lost. It was not recklessness. It was will, and will was something the Croth had never faced. That night, in the silence of space, the Croth detected new energy signatures in the ruins of the Vayari system. Cold mechanical logic registered the presence of unfamiliar ships. Orders were processed. Drones were dispatched. The Croth were coming. And humanity for the first time would face the nightmare that had broken empires. But humanity was different. Humanity had answered. The Vayari survivors never expected help to arrive, and when it did, they thought it was a dream that would vanish. The humans brought food, repaired broken systems, and spoke with calm voices. Still deep inside, the Vayari carried only fear. The Croth were not distant. They always came back. They always hunted until nothing remained. Captain Aaron Blake knew this truth even before he saw it with his own eyes. The Vayari had told him in broken English and gestures. Their warnings were filled with trembling voices and shaking hands. Machines will come, they repeated again and again. They never stop. They never forget. Aaron did not doubt them. He had seen their hollow eyes and the scars on their ships. Something had done this to them. Something merciless. He only hoped that humanity's courage and strange way of fighting would be enough. Repair and trust. The first days after arrival were filled with work. Humans were quick to move. Teams spread through the Vayari station. They patched leaking pipes with old steel, rewired power grids, and replaced broken air filters with makeshift systems from their own ships. To the Vayari, this seemed impossible. Their own engineers, highly trained and precise, had given up when parts failed. Humans, however, simply created new parts from scraps. Dr. Elena Marquez laughed as she used human welding tools on a cracked Vayari corridor. It doesn't have to look perfect, she explained to the confused alien beside her. It just has to work. The Vayari blinked. But this will not last. Maybe not forever, Elena admitted with a grin. But it will last long enough for you to breathe. Slowly, trust began to grow. Children who had hidden in fear began to peek at the humans, curious about their strange faces and their laughter. Human medics healed the sick, using simple medicines that somehow worked on Vayari biology. Engineers taught the survivors how to patch and reuse what they thought was useless. Yet under this fragile peace, tension grew. The Croth arrival happened on the fourth night. The alarms of the Vayari station screamed with a sound that froze blood. Sensors picked up movement, metal shapes descending from the edge of the system. The Croth had found them. The Vayari panicked. Some grabbed children and ran to shelters. Others froze, whispering words of despair. To them, this was the end. The Croth never left survivors. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Aaron stood firm. His officers rushed to their stations. Screens lit up with red warnings as enemy drones closed in. How many? Aaron demanded. 20 signatures. No, 30. Drones only, not a full fleet, his sensor officer reported. Aaron nodded sharply. Good. That means this is a test. Let's show them the test was a mistake. The first battle, the Croth drones entered the station's orbit like a dark cloud. They were sharp, angular machines with no signs of weakness. They did not send warnings. They did not ask questions. They simply locked weapons. The first blast struck the outer hull of the station, tearing apart an abandoned docking arm. Explosions rocked the survivors' home. Screams filled the air. But before panic turned to death, human ships moved. The Dauntless fired railguns that spat glowing streaks of tungsten. Cargo ships turned into war machines, launching improvised missiles built from mining charges. Small exploration vessels danced in strange, unpredictable paths, firing bursts of plasma and lasers. The Veyari watched in shock. Humans were not precise. They were chaotic. Their ships looked like junk compared to the Kroth's cold perfection. Yet somehow that chaos worked. A drone locked onto one of the smaller ships, calculating its path with perfect logic. But the human pilot suddenly veered in a direction no algorithm could predict. The drone fired, missed, and was rammed head-on by the tiny vessel, which overloaded its engines and exploded. The human ship was lost, but the drone was gone too. "Insane," whispered a Veyari elder watching from the station's screens. "They fight like fire." Desperation becomes strategy. The Kroth adapted quickly. Their drones began focusing fire, cutting through human armor with ruthless precision. One cargo ship was torn in half, scattering its crew into the void. Another exploration craft lost its engines, spinning helplessly. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Aaron clenched his fists. "We can't fight them ship to ship. We'll bleed out. We need to think like them, but fight like us." He turned to Elena, who was monitoring enemy data. "How do they react to overload?" They predict stable systems," Elena said quickly. "If something malfunctions, they pause to reassess. They don't like unstable input." Aaron smiled grimly. "Then let's give them chaos." Orders went out across the fleet. Engineers overloaded reactors to give off false signals. Pilots cut power mid-maneuver, drifting unpredictably before reigniting thrusters. Cargo ships ejected scrap metal clouds, confusing targeting sensors. The Kroth hesitated. Their logic-driven minds struggled to calculate this storm of nonsense. In those moments of hesitation, humans struck. Railguns punched through weakened shields. Missiles found their marks. One by one, drones exploded into fireballs. For the first time in living memory, the Kroth retreated. Aftermath, when silence returned, the humans cheered. Some cried from relief. Others sat in exhausted silence. But all of them felt the same thing. They had faced the machines and survived. The Veyari, on the other hand, stood frozen in disbelief. They had never seen the Kroth retreat. To them, machines always pressed forward until nothing remained. But here, now, with humanity, the impossible had happened. Elder Tayran, leader of the survivors, approached Captain Aaron with trembling steps. His voice was hoarse. You drove them away. No one has done this in centuries." Aaron looked at him with calm eyes. "They're not gods. They're just machines. Machines can be broken." Tayran bowed his head. For the first time, the Veyari felt hope, a warning, but even as the survivors celebrated, a shadow remained. Elena studied the battle logs late into the night. She saw something in the patterns, something troubling. "They weren't serious," she told Aaron quietly. "This wasn't a full attack. This was observation. They wanted to test us." Aaron frowned. "And what did we show them?" "That we can hurt them," Elena said. Her voice was heavy. "Which means they'll come back. Not with 30 drones. With thousands." Aaron stood at the viewport, staring into the stars where the Kroth had fled. His reflection stared back at him. Tired, scarred, but unbroken. "Then we'll be ready," he whispered. New Bonzen. The days after the battle, something shifted. The Veyari no longer saw humans as reckless children. They saw them as allies, even protectors. Children who had once hidden now clung to human soldiers, laughing at their strange jokes. Veyari engineers began learning human improvisation, welding scraps together, finding strength in what they thought was useless. For the first time, the survivors began to believe they might have a future, not because they were strong, but because humanity had come. The galaxy watches far away, the battle did not go unnoticed. Other races, ancient and cautious, had monitored the Kroth for centuries. They saw the retreat. They saw the humans. Some were impressed. Some were afraid. A few whispered warnings. These humans, they do not know fear like others. They may become something dangerous, but none of them moved. They only watched. The Veyari station floated in silence, but the silence was uneasy. The survivors tried to rebuild their lives with the help of the humans, yet all of them knew the truth. The Croth would return. The small victory had been nothing more than a spark in a storm. Machines did not forget. They would calculate, adapt, and arrive again, stronger than before. Captain Aaron Blake walked the halls of the station, his boots echoing against the patched metal floors. He saw the Veyari children playing with human tools, pretending to be soldiers. He saw families smiling for the first time in years. He also saw the shadows in the eyes of the elders, shadows of fear that no amount of laughter could hide. He knew what was coming. A council of voices, inside the central chamber, humans and Veyari leaders gathered. Elder Terran spoke first, his voice rough from years of sorrow. "You have given us hope," he said, bowing his head toward Aaron. "But hope cannot stop the Croth. They will return in numbers greater than you have seen. Your ships are brave, but they are few. Even together we cannot stand against them." The room grew tense. Some Veyari argued that the humans should leave, that they had already risked too much. Others begged them to stay, fearing that without them the machines would wipe them out. Aaron raised his hand, silencing the voices. His expression was calm but firm. "You're right," he admitted. "If we stay here and wait, we'll be crushed. But what if we don't wait?" The Veyari stared at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" Aaron leaned forward. "What if we strike first? Not here, not while they're ready. We take the fight to them where they don't expect us." The chamber erupted in shock. "Impossible," shouted one elder. "No one has ever attacked the Croth directly. Their territory is endless. Their foundries are endless." Dr. Elena Marquez spoke softly, yet with fire in her eyes. "No one has tried the way we fight. The Croth don't understand chaos. They don't understand risk. That's where we are strong." The Veyari leaders argued, torn between disbelief and a faint, dangerous spark of hope. In the end, Elder Terran bowed his head. "If you truly mean to do this, then we will guide you. We know where the Croth's nearest foundry world lies. But I warn you, humans, if you go there, many of you will not return." Aaron's voice was steady. "Then we'll make sure our deaths mean something." Preparing for war, the fleet was small and battered. The humans had lost ships, and the ones left were scarred from battle. But they did not rest. Instead, they began building. In empty hangars, engineers tore apart broken Croth drones, studying every fragment. The machines were perfect, too perfect. They had no imagination, no flexibility. Humanity turned that weakness into a weapon. "We can't outgun them," one engineer explained, "but we can outthink them." Using scrap metal, stolen parts, and dangerous experiments, the humans created weapons that no other race would dare to try. Missiles packed with unstable fuels, jammers that broadcast nonsense signals to confuse sensors, tiny drones programmed with flawed logic that would crash into Croth machines unpredictably. The Veyari watched in disbelief. "You are building weapons with errors," one of them said. "That's the point," the humans answered. "The Croth can predict perfection. They can't predict mistakes." Doubt and determination, even among the humans, doubt grew. Some whispered that they were marching toward suicide. Some wondered if Earth itself would be safe if the Croth noticed them. Late one night, Aaron stood with Elena by a viewport watching the stars. "Do you ever think we're crazy?" he asked quietly. Elena smiled faintly. "All the time. But think about it, Aaron. If we hide, the Croth will find Earth sooner or later. If we fight now, at least we decide how." Aaron nodded. Her words carried weight. Humanity had always survived by taking risks. This would be the greatest risk of all. Journey into the dark. The fleet left the Veyari system with little fanfare. Only a few survivors remained behind, their station too fragile to join. They watched with tearful eyes as human ships and a handful of Veyari fighters jumped into the dark. Their destination was a Croth foundry world, a place where the machines built themselves in endless cycles. No living fleet had ever dared approach. The journey was long and tense. Every jump carried danger. Every sensor reading made them fear detection. In the quiet between stars, crews shared stories, sang old songs, and reminded themselves why they fought. They were not warriors born for conquest. They were ordinary people, pilots, doctors, miners, and explorers, facing an enemy that had crushed empires. And yet, they pressed on. The foundry world. When the fleet arrived, the sight stole their breath. Before them stretched a planet wrapped in metal. Vast towers rose like claws into space, glowing with forges. Rivers of molten steel flowed across its surface. Orbiting rings of drones moved in endless patterns. guarding their home with machine precision. The Veyari pilots whispered in terror. "This is death. This is where our people fell." Aaron's voice cut through their fear. "Then this is where we show them humanity doesn't fall. The gamble begins. The plan was madness, and every soul knew it. They could not destroy the Foundry world. That was impossible. But they could wound it, hurt it badly enough that the Croth would never forget the name of humanity." Phase 1 began with confusion. Human jammers screamed nonsense signals into the void. Croth drones froze trying to calculate the data. Tiny human drones, filled with unstable engines, zipped into enemy lines, exploding without warning. Phase 2 was chaos. Cargo ships dropped clouds of scrap metal that appeared as ghost fleets on sensors. Exploration vessels darted between defenses, drawing fire and vanishing. Phase 3 was the strike. The Dauntless and its closest escorts dove straight toward the planet's industrial towers, firing everything they had. Missiles streaked across the sky. Railguns tore through steel. Explosions bloomed like firestorms. The Croth reacted, but too slowly. Their logic-driven defenses had never faced such madness. They tried to predict, but the humans were unpredictable. They tried to contain, but the humans broke every rule. For the first time in their existence, the Croth's perfection cracked. Sacrifice. But victory came with pain. One by one, human ships fell. An exploration vessel was sliced apart by drones. A Veyari fighter burned as it rammed an enemy tower, taking 100 drones with it. On the Dauntless, alarms blared as shields collapsed. Aaron stood unshaken. "Keep firing," he ordered, even as sparks flew across the bridge. Elena clung to her station, her eyes locked on enemy data. "It's working," she gasped. They don't know how to respond. But everyone knew the cost. Every strike drained their strength. Every moment of chaos was bought with blood. Breaking the Foundry at last, the fleet reached the heart of the Foundry. Massive reactors glowed with power, feeding the endless production lines. "This is it," Aaron said. "Hit them with everything." Missiles screamed toward the reactors. Human drones dove like meteors. Explosions shook the surface. Towers collapsed in fire. Then came the final strike. The Dauntless, its hull broken and its engines failing, launched its reactor core directly into the planet's forge. The explosion was like a second sun. When the light faded, the Foundry world burned. Entire sections of the planet were shattered, its production lines crippled. The Croth defenses collapsed in confusion. The humans had done the impossible. Retreat, but survival was not guaranteed. With heavy hearts, the fleet pulled back. Only half of their ships remained. Many friends had been lost, but they had achieved something no one believed possible. They had wounded the unstoppable. As the fleet jumped away, Elena whispered, "We've just changed the galaxy." Aaron nodded. His voice was tired but strong. "And the galaxy will never forget it." The galaxy reacts. News spread quickly. Across distant stars, ancient races received whispers of what had happened. The humans, young and small, had struck the Croth and lived. Some were inspired. Some were afraid. Some began to watch humanity with wary eyes. For the Veyari, hope returned. For the first time in centuries, they believed in tomorrow. Closing of Part 3, the fleet limped home, scarred but unbroken. They had gambled everything, and against all reason they had won. But in the silence of space, the Croth stirred. Their logic processed the new threat. Humanity was no longer unknown. They were marked. And as the stars turned, both friend and foe would remember. Humanity was not just another species. Humanity was the fire that refused to go out. The stars were quiet as the fleet limped back toward the Veyari system. The human ships were battered, their hulls scarred from their daring strike on the Croth Foundry world. Many of the smaller vessels had been lost, and some crews would never see Earth again. Yet despite the losses, the humans were not defeated. If anything, they were stronger, wiser, united, and full of a strange, unshakable courage that no machine could calculate. Captain Aaron Blake stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, staring into the deep black. He had not spoken much during the journey home. Words were meaningless compared to what they had just accomplished. Still, he felt the weight of what lay ahead. The Croth would not forget. They never did. Humanity had declared itself a threat, and threats demanded attention, reunion, and reflection. When the fleet arrived at the Veyari station, it was greeted not with celebration, but with relief and cautious hope. The survivors poured out of shelters, embracing the humans who had risked everything for them. Children clung to engineers who had saved their parents' lives. Elders bowed their heads in respect to soldiers who had charged into impossible odds. Elder Taran approached Captain Aaron. "You have done what no one else could," he said softly. "You have given us hope not just for survival but for life. But I fear the Croth will not stop with our system. They will come for more." Aaron nodded. "I know. And when they do, we will be ready. This time we have allies. This time we have knowledge. This time we will not be afraid." Elena Marquez joined them, her eyes bright with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "They can rebuild faster than we thought, but we learned their weaknesses. Chaos confuses them. Unpredictability defeats them. We have changed the rules of war." Taran looked at her, his expression filled with awe. "Then perhaps humanity is not like the others. Perhaps you are the spark we have been waiting for." A call across the stars news of the strike spread faster than any human communication could. Distant races, some ancient and powerful, received the reports. The Croth, usually feared across galaxies as unstoppable predators, had been wounded by a species considered young and weak. Some were inspired, seeing hope where there had been despair. Some were wary, watching humanity with suspicion. If the humans had dared attack the Croth directly, what might they dare next? In the silence of space, across millions of light years, decisions were being made. Alliances shifted. The galaxy had taken notice of Earth. Humanity was no longer a fledgling species hidden on a small blue planet. They were now players in a dangerous game, and everyone would have to consider their presence. Preparing for the next wave, the humans knew better than anyone that the battle was not over. The Croth would return, larger and more organized. Supplies were low, ships were damaged, and many were grieving lost friends. Yet on the Veyari station, a plan began to take shape. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, combining human ingenuity with Veyari knowledge. Damaged ships were rebuilt stronger. Missiles were redesigned. Defensive drones were programmed with unpredictable maneuvers. Every scrap of metal, every spare circuit, every idea was turned into a weapon of survival. Captain Aaron gathered his senior officers for a meeting. "We can't win by hiding," he said firmly. "We can't win by waiting. The Croth think they are inevitable. That's why they will fail. We are unpredictable. We adapt, and we fight not because we have to, but because we choose to." His words were met with nods, even from those who had doubted themselves. Humanity had survived impossible odds once. They would survive again. Unexpected allies as preparations continued. The Veyari began to offer more than guidance. They shared maps of distant star systems, showing regions where the Croth had previously failed to expand. They shared ancient technologies that had been long abandoned but still functional. They even joined the humans in training exercises, forming small fighter squads to test new tactics. "This is strange," whispered Elena to Aaron as she watched a group of Veyari pilots maneuver like children at play, laughing as they dodged simulated attacks. "They've never trusted anyone like this before. And now they trust us," Aaron smiled. "Trust is powerful. The Croth can never predict it. It's the one thing they can't calculate." By combining human adaptability and Veyari experience, the fleet grew stronger every day. What had started as a small mission of rescue was turning into a united force that could stand against even the greatest threat in the galaxy. The next attack had came sooner than anyone expected. Sensor readings picked up a massive Croth fleet, moving through a nearby sector. Thousands of drones, dozens of command ships, all marching toward the Veyari system. The humans did not panic. The Veyari did not despair. Instead, they prepared. Defensive lines were established in orbit, traps were laid in space, and every ship was ready for the fight of its life. Captain Aaron addressed his fleet. "They think they can intimidate us with numbers. They think we are weak. They are wrong. Today we fight not just for the Veyari. We fight for ourselves, for Earth, and for every species that has been crushed by fear. Today we show the galaxy what humanity can do." The Battle of the Veyari System. The Croth arrived in force, their ships forming a dark cloud across space. But the humans were ready. Chaos and unpredictability became their weapons. Cargo ships, seemingly defenseless, unleashed debris storms. Drones with faulty engines swarmed the Croth, crashing unpredictably into their formation. Missiles streaked across the void in erratic paths. each explosion causing confusion in the enemy's calculations. The Veyari joined in, striking with precision where humans could not. Their combined attacks tore through Croth lines, forcing even the largest command ships to divert resources. Aaron piloted the Dauntless directly into the center of the battle. His officers called it reckless. He called it necessary. Every move was calculated to create chaos, to force the Croth to make mistakes, and it worked. Machines that had never failed paused, recalculated, and faltered. Lines broke. Command ships were isolated. The Croth were wounded, confused, and for the first time, truly afraid of their opponent. Victory through unity. After hours of intense fighting, the Croth began to retreat. Their fleets withdrew in disarray, leaving behind wreckage that floated silently in space. Humans and Veyari surveyed the aftermath with exhaustion and relief. Ships were lost. Crews were missing. But the system was safe. Elder Terran approached Aaron once more. "You have done what no one believed possible," he said. "You have faced the impossible and survived. You have changed the course of our history." Aaron looked at him, tired but unwavering. "We didn't do it alone. Humanity is strong, but together with you, with every ally who chooses to fight, we are unstoppable." The Veyari bowed. They finally understood what had taken centuries to believe. Humanity was not just another species. Humanity was something extraordinary. A new era. Begins with the Croth temporarily defeated, the Veyari system began rebuilding in earnest. Humans and Veyari worked together, exchanging knowledge, building stronger ships, and preparing for future threats. Humanity had arrived among the stars not as conquerors but as defenders. News of the battle spread quickly across the galaxy. Some races were inspired to act against the Croth. Others watched humanity with suspicion, realizing that this young species had shattered expectations and could become a force unlike any other. On Earth, people celebrated quietly, unaware of the full scope of the war, but humanity itself knew the truth. The universe was larger, stranger, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And now, humans were ready to meet it head-on. Humanity's legacy Captain Aaron Blake stood once more on the bridge of the Dauntless, staring into the stars. Every mission, every risk, every loss had led to this moment. Humanity had answered a plea for help when no one else would. They had faced impossible odds and survived. They had turned chaos into strategy, weakness into strength, and fear into courage. The Croth would return. There was no doubt of that. But humanity would be waiting, not as victims, not as prey, but as a force that refused to bow, a species that chose to fight, and a people who would never give up. Elder Terran placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. "The galaxy will remember this day, not just as the day you saved us, but as the day humanity announced itself." Aaron nodded, letting the words sink in. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same again.